All right, we're going to give folks just a few seconds to log on. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for our first Lunch and Learn of the year. Today, you're going to learn about a municipal-led initiative that was, I guess, a little outside the box, but has had a really meaningful impact in our community. Today, we welcome Jason Burgess. He's the CEO for the City of Niagara Falls, and Lori Watson. She's the Director, Social Assistance and Employment Opportunities, Community Services, Niagara Region. She's a tiny little thing, but a big long title. So, welcome, Lori. And they're going to tell us a little bit about the Level Up program. So the format for the session will be as follows. You could submit your questions through the Q&A function or the chat button at the bottom of your screen. We'll address all of the questions at the end of this presentation. So at this time, I'll turn it over to both Jason and Lori.
Thanks, Dolores. Just for those in attendance, I'll give a little bit of background, and then I'll rope Lori in to discuss it from her viewpoint. I just want to give it from the municipality's viewpoint and what our taxpayers are seeing. There's an interesting study that just recently got published in earlier this month from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario that kind of updated the homelessness situation in Ontario. And there was a 7.4% increase is what they've estimated in Ontario from 2024 to 2025, with their, estimating about 85,000 people with homelessness. There was an increase in the number of encampments across Ontario, even including rural Ontario, with 42 of the 47 Ontario service managers reporting encampments, and they estimated about 2,000 encampments across the province. And chronic homelessness is increasing. It's more than 45,000 people. So the problem is getting bigger, and the severity of the problem is getting worse. And that's what we're seeing, certainly in Niagara Falls. It is likely our number one issue that we get from taxpayers here. And it's an incredibly tough issue. It crosses a whole bunch of governmental departments, from healthcare, both from a mental and drug addiction point of view, from housing, from social services for income supports and other supports. Um, that's when you have to bring in three different specialties and areas and try to get them coordinated. It always becomes a much more difficult challenge. And for the municipal government, not that, we're trying to shirk responsibility, but we don't play in any of those areas. And that's why it's tough for a municipality. Technically, our job is to clean up the mess. That, is in theory our role. But that's not something that we wanted to do. We do support social services. At the end of the day, we are fielding those complaints, and we are trying to deal with the situation with the tools that we have. So that was essentially the background to this. Um, and because of the severity that was increasing, you can either spend money, and we've been spending a lot of money dealing with the after effects of homelessness and mental health, and that. My estimated garbage disposal cost from encampments is over $200,000. That's just to dispose of the stuff. Then I have staff time cleaning it up. I have essentially dedicated crews now to deal with this. So my cost is, well exceeding $1 million on this, and those costs kept on increasing. So we wanted to deal with the issue before people got into the crisis situation, when they were, borderline, before they got into chronic homelessness situation. So we sat down a number of agencies and asked them to come up with, some suggestions or some solutions, something that we could invest into. And the one thing that popped up was, breaking down the segment of those individuals, was taking a look at single parents who were not on Ontario Works for a very long period of time. Someone just kind of getting to that stage. And if we could keep them from getting too far into Ontario Works and Lori will explain, the economic realities of if you're a person on Ontario Works, what does that mean? It's not hard to understand why you start to decelerate down in that. So we created a program that targeted individuals that were single parents that was just into the Ontario Works system. And, it was a simple program. We gave them a job. It's not rocket science. We gave them a job. We trained them. That's why the program was called Level Up. We wanted to take their skills, level up their resume, and also level them up economically so that they're in a stable situation. Um, and so we ended up taking two individuals and essentially gave them employment for a year and benefits, stabilize their economic situation, and they've improved their resume. Now, one actually is still working with us because of the success of that individual, and she's now moved to our temporary pool. But that is essentially the program because it gets them from that where they're teetering with social assistance. It gets them back into active, steady employment where they can stabilize themselves and look for better opportunities with an improved resume. So it was not um, sometimes a simple approach. It's an effective approach, and that's, what we did for that. And we did have some lessons learned from that. There was things that I think we're going to run the program again with a new candidate this spring. I think there needs to be a few adjustments to the program. But when you look at the benefit to the individual, it was enormous. When you look at the benefit to the taxpayer, it is enormous also because instead of paying for cleanup costs and social assistance and that, you're actually getting work produced back. So we thought it was a win for the individual. We thought it was a win for the taxpayer and a win for our organization because we had some good quality work produced. So that was kind of the three-legged stool approach. So that was the program. I don't like when people say, oh, it's revolutionary. I think we copied it from, frankly, things that went on when, in the 20s and stuff, where there was economic hardships and the government started to employ people to do things. And it's the same type of concept. But it takes a little bit of initiative to do it. It takes a little bit of support from the social agency partners to assist an organization. We're not trained on some of this stuff, and we don't know all the ins and outs of how to go about this. And that's where the region was a great support on that. So that's a bit of background. There is a video, but we're having a little bit of difficulty with the video, but we'll circulate that. But I brought Lori on to talk about a couple of things, just so that you understand what the economic reality is for these individuals. And if there was interest in running the program, how you'd go about a little bit on getting the program. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a full-time 1 year gig either for the individual. There are different ways that you can support. So that's why the smarter one of the two of us is Lori. So that's why I roped her in on this one.
My cue, Jason.
That's your cue.
That's my cue. So, good afternoon. As Jason mentioned, I'm Lori Watson. I'm the Director of Social Assistance here with the Niagara Region, as well as the Director of the Poverty Reduction Strategy for Niagara. And thank you for the opportunity to speak on this initiative today. And I think, as Jason noted, it really is the result of an innovative approach that brings the municipality, the region, our service providers in economic development, and Employment Ontario, as well as, individuals that are in receipt of social assistance. Jason asked me to speak a little bit about the economic reality of individuals in receipt of Ontario Works specifically. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I'm going to start first with the volume or the number of people in receipt of social assistance in the Niagara region. So currently the Ontario Works caseload is about 13,000 across the Niagara region, so from Fort Erie through to Grimsby. That equates to about 22,000 people. About 38% of those individuals are children under the age of 17. So we think about the impact of being on social assistance or Ontario Works. And then I'm going to talk about the depth of poverty. Individuals in receipt of social assistance, if they are a single person, the maximum amount they can receive is $733 a month. That $733 a month pays for their, or is intended to pay for rent and their food. Now, we know in the Niagara region, an average one-bedroom apartment or even a bachelor apartment in the Niagara region probably goes for somewhere around $1,600 or $1,700. And again, the total amount that a single person would receive on social assistance is $733. It is 67% below the poverty line. Jason mentioned that this particular initiative was focusing in on the sole support parent. So if you are a sole support parent in receipt of Ontario Works with one child, the amount of money that you receive through Ontario Works is just over $1,000. Now, in addition to that, you would be entitled to your child tax credit, which might put you at about $1,400 a month to support yourself and your one child. Again, keeping in mind that is for your food and for your shelter for both you and your child. As Jason said, that the initiative is really designed to provide opportunity to individuals that are newer into the Ontario Works program to help to avoid that continued depth of poverty for individuals that are in receipt of social assistance. What this particular program did was leverage the information that we have for individuals that are on social assistance, recognizing what strengths and skills that they bring to the table as it relates to their education, other resources, whether there's childcare needs and other areas like that. And then the ability to work with an employer, in this case, it was the City of Niagara Falls, to be able to match individuals to that particular opportunity. Now, that individual made their readiness for that employment. We were able to partner with Employment Ontario service providers, so they play an important role in this as well, in order to help to upskill or support them in that transition. But what we bring to the table as the deliverers of social assistance is understanding that broader complexity of the barriers that can sometimes get in the way of moving forward with employment, that we're able to kind of clear the path and work with both the individual that is going into job placement as well as supporting the employer and being that conduit between the two in order to support the placement and the retention. Jason commented on the fact that for this particular initiative, there were two individuals. We probably screened close to 50 candidates from the Ontario Works side in order to ensure a level of readiness. Because from the work that we do in the area of social assistance and understanding the impact of poverty, we want to ensure the greatest success for not only the employer, but also for the individual and their readiness as well. So because we do comprehensive case management with clients, we have a line of sight to help to support their readiness and that connection to employers. With respect to interest in being involved in something similar to this, certainly you can reach out to me at the Niagara Region, Lori Watson at the Niagara Region, and discussions also with Employment Ontario service providers, because it truly is a partnership. Again, I think what Jason and the City of Niagara Falls have identified is that addressing complex community issues, tackling it one person at a time, has a significant impact on not only your community, but the individuals themselves. The one individual would share with you that the employment now with the City of Niagara Falls has changed her entire life. And not only her life, but her child's life as well. And the opportunity to make that kind of impact on somebody is really, really incredible. So, Jason, did I cover off what you were looking for?
Yeah, and I think the other one point from a taxpayer point of view, Laura, you mentioned the caseload. how many case managers do you have that have to handle that caseload, and how much time is there? Because one of the strategies we're having is if we could take some pressure off of the quote unquote easier cases, and I don't want to minimize it, but it allows your case managers to focus on some of the more difficult cases also.
Absolutely. So thank you, Jason. So right now, each case manager is managing somewhere between 120 to 140 cases, which if we put that into adults, it's probably around 160 individuals that they're working actively with in order to support them to move off of social assistance. Social assistance, as we know, is intended to be a temporary financial assistance, but lots of other issues can combine the complexity of being on assistance for longer than just a short period of time. So to your point, Jason, these partnerships create greater capacity for our staff to be able to focus in on individuals that may not be ready to participate in programs such as this, that are maybe closer to what you described earlier, where closer to homelessness or may be homeless as well and in receipt of social assistance. So it creates capacity within the system 100%.
So that is kind of the overview of, what we did. Again, I don't like to use the term innovative because I think it's a pretty straightforward approach. It takes just commitment to do it. And like I said, there was some learnings. One of the things we did do at the beginning was we did put some money aside for special supports for these two individuals. Childcare and summer camps are big issues for single parents, and more so for these. And transportation sometimes can be an issue too. And the region was supportive with the one individual with bus passes, and even we supported on clothing purchases for the one individual so that they were office ready for that. So those were a couple of other things that we kind of prepped for at the beginning, and we had to utilize it. Not as much actually, because Lori was able to get money from other sources for some of that stuff because she knows how to work that system. But those are some of the challenges. And then Lori, you had also mentioned that it doesn't I think before you had talked about it doesn't actually have to be a full-time. There's also the ability for part-time work too.
Absolutely, Jason. So, individuals in receipt of social assistance, there is earning exemptions. So, there is always a benefit to individuals to work any amount of hours because it puts more money in individuals' pockets. So, whether it's a part-time position, a full-time position, a seasonal position, any job opportunity works to the advantage to the individual that and families that are in receipt of social assistance, as well as to the employer. And to Jason's point as well, we are able to leverage some dollars to support that job readiness component. So if it is about work boots or a hard hat or even some introductory training, we can work within our own funding structure as well as within Employment Ontario providers to leverage some funding to support employers. And I really think it's about the job retention component. And if I can just speak to that just one moment, is that in the depths of poverty, one of the pieces we've come to understand is that income drop off or the income cliff. If you can imagine, it would be similar to if you had a sustained income from an employer or other government source for an extended period of time. It would be the same for somebody on social assistance. And the idea of transitioning from that to something else is frightening for all of us. But think about it in the context of we are the only mechanism, we are the last stop of social assistance. So although the idea of moving into employment is an exciting one, that 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 angst around the separation from the income support of social assistance, we cannot ignore that. And the strength of this program is the wraparound supports that we provide for the new employee as well as with the employer to help during that transition so that in the event that the employment opportunity does not work out for the individual, that they are assured that we are there to support them and that their rent will still get paid. Because imagine again, Jason talked about, it's a sole support parent, and they were sole support parents in this particular case, where their income source is $1,400 a month. So that transition is a significant one because it also includes their drug benefits, their dental, all of that well-being and receipt of social assistance. So that exciting leap, so to speak, is truly a leap. So the more support that we can provide with that transition, the more successful the outcome. And I really want to acknowledge Jason's staff for their commitment in working with the individuals, in bridging those gaps and supporting individuals. And again, I'll just say it is truly life changing for people that are in receipt of social assistance.
That's a really great point that you just made, Lori. Just thinking from perspective of a business wanting to maybe try this program, there'd be a lot of guilt involved if it didn't work out, just because it wasn't a good fit. To think that, someone has taken that leap of faith, that security blanket is gone, and now, it hasn't worked out, and it's not a good feeling. And so the employer is also taking a leap of faith, right? So it's good to know that that security blanket is still there should it not work out, because I think that might prohibit some folks from participating, knowing that I don't want to mess this person's life up anymore if this doesn't work out. So that's a really great point that you've made. There was a question in the Q&A, but you did answer it, so we're good with that. And so for the part-time positions, again, they're not losing anything. So if they're only working a few hours a week to kind of dip their toe in that pool, they're still receiving their support, correct?
Absolutely, Dolores. So we would work to ensure that we're maximizing all available benefits within the legislation, of course, to help with that income benefit cliff that can happen as people transition off. The other piece is important to note that whether individuals are part of this program or individuals that are in receipt of social assistance that are working those part-time hours, one great month does not take you off social assistance. That it's similar if you think about it with employment insurance as an example, that you might have some earnings that one month you might get less from EI, and then the next month you receive more. The same can happen with social assistance. In this particular program, based on the income provided through the City of Niagara Falls, both individuals completely transitioned off social assistance, but as part of the program, we maintained the case management. So our case management continued with the individuals even though they were no longer in receipt of social assistance with us, in order to get ahead of any issues that might arise. Again, keeping in mind, and not specific to this individual, but just to paint a picture. You might be a sole support parent who secures a position who doesn't have a vehicle, who needs to take the bus, and then something happens and your child is sick, or you can't get on the bus, or transportation falls down. Many of the resources that we might have around the table, and I'm generalizing when I say it, are obvious resources to ourselves that we're able to tap into, that people that are living in poverty simply do not have. They don't have the $30 if you needed to Uber into work because your car didn't start. They don't necessarily have the parent who's able to take the child if the child is sick and can't go to school, or the school calls because there's a behavior issue with your child and you need to pick your child up. The resources that individuals have in the depth of poverty are not the same as what we might have. And the advantage of this program is trying to shore up those resources through partnerships in order to achieve greater success for individuals.
Yeah, it sounds so simple, but I know that there was a lot of work to make this happen, as is always the case. Um, Jason, I have a question for you. So, I know that Lori's team kind of vetted the candidates and sent over a few, but were you still able to interview the candidates that came over, and what was that process like?
Yeah, so I think we took I think for each position there were 6 or 8 applications. The applications were actually, and my HR department handled it. And I want to stress like these individuals had good work track records. They were just tend to be kind of part-time, temporary, and things happen. One, I think, like or like seasonal work, like with landscaping, and then before you used to be able to get a lot of, you used to be able to keep your income up as a landscaper with winter snow removal, but then the winters aren't as wintry anymore and they
Wait
don't
a
have that.
minute.
But
Wait a minute.
today there is, but so they all had, stuff on their resume. It wasn't like a blank resume. We did the interview and we interviewed for fit for our positions, like which skills we thought were good. And ironically, during the process, it was either one or two when we were interviewing, they actually got hired by another company. So that was, successful that way too. So no, we had our choice of candidates and it was just a bit different approach. And one might say, well, why wouldn't they just apply through the front door on the other ones? And I think it's what Miss Watson says is there is this big leap of faith, and so the security blanket allows them to kind of make that application, knowing that they're not going to lose out on medical benefits or whatever else. So no, we were happy with the two candidates, and like I said, we're doing the program again, this year. So yeah, no, you got to choose. We made a commitment though that we wanted a 1 year. We like we made a commitment that we wanted to commit to them for 1 year as a minimum, so that they could get back to the EI status. If that was the worst case that happened, they would be back on the EI and versus back there. So that would provide them with they'd be in a bit different circumstance. But like I said, the one candidate. My staff wanted to found another job for her, really liked her performance, and we went from there. The other candidate did a good job. It just there are some other changes going on in that department. So and he's off looking for something else.
And so the key really is whether or not you have a full-time position after, whether it's a year or 6 months, whatever, it's to get them some good work experience and to update that resume.
Update that resume and I think get back into the consistency and flow of work and continual work. And I think in their mindset when I talked to the one lady, knowing that they had a year, they could actually plan for stuff
Sure.
versus a 1 month job or a 2 month. This allowed them to plan. To make their plans and do that. And we encourage them, frankly, they were members of our union, and I have to give a shout out to CUPE. CUPE was supportive of this. So they were members of their union. They were allowed to bid in what's called bid into other jobs into CUPE. That's what this one lady has done. She's now in the temp clerical pool. So they were in the union. They could do that, or obviously apply. I would be more than happy if they came here, worked for 6 months, and got a job someplace else.
Yeah.
That would be a success. So,
Yeah.
but no, good candidates, and we had the whole interview process like any other employee.
Yeah, that's great. How many businesses, organizations are participating in this program? I'm assuming it's more than just the City of Niagara
It
Falls?
right now it's just the City of Niagara Falls.
It
We did it
is.
as a pilot.
Okay.
We did it as a pilot project to
Okay.
test it out. I convinced my council to do it. We kept it quiet, I would say, until we had our year underneath, and that's why I'm going out to the chambers. I'm going out to some of the other cities. I'm trying to convince two of the cities, and they're actually looking at it seriously to pick up the program themselves. My whole thing, and hopefully people watch the video at the end of it, if I can get 100 businesses to do one, and if you take 100 people off of that list, and then that 100 people is probably more like 200 people because they're all single support parents or 250 people, it starts to reduce the list. It's 100 people doing one small thing. So that's the intent. So this is the start of trying to get other people to sign up for it.
I
I
love
want
it.
Lori to be busy with this program.
Yeah, I'm sure she would love that. She would love that. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And we know that, homelessness is a big, complicated issue. There's not going to be one solution that's going to fix this. So these initiatives are so important. And so, Lori, I think you alluded to it, but maybe one more time, if people who are listening to this, message are interested in learning more or getting involved, how do they do that? Where do they go? Do they go to Jason? Do they come to you? Where should we direct them?
Jason took his mic off. Do you want to respond, Jason?
No, I was gonna say they could call us, they can call Lori, and we'll like if they call us, we'll tell you what our experience is. I'll get Jay McLean, my HR director, tell you that we would immediately hand them off to Lori and her team. But yeah, pick it up anywhere, and Lori's team will get into action with it with her partners, with the Ontario Employment folks. So.
Absolutely. I don't think there's a wrong door.
Okay.
Either one of us. Absolutely.
Figure it out. And so when someone does contact you, what's the time frame? Like how long before they can anticipate interviewing folks for a position?
We can do it as fast as the employer is looking for.
Okay.
Because we have a large pool of individuals, and we're committed to success for individuals. We will mobilize the resources based on what the employer is looking for, whatever municipality, if a driver's license required or a certain level of education or whatever criteria, and then look to work with the employer in a way that works best for them. So although, as a pilot, the City of Niagara Falls and how we worked through that recruitment process worked really well for the City of Niagara Falls, but we're open to what that can look like for any employer that comes to the table. As the ultimate goal is that we're working together to provide opportunity for individuals to leave social assistance, and however we can make that happen together is the ultimate goal. So I look forward to some phone calls.
Yeah.
That'd be
Yeah.
excellent.
It would be excellent. Well, that's a great message. It's a great program. Kudos to you both. Yeah, I can't say enough about how highly we think of this program, and a real leap of faith for you, Jason, and your council, right?
Yep, and my
To
counsel.
make this happen. So congratulations to everybody involved.
Thank you.
Um, any final words?
I would just encourage it. Like, if you talk to these individuals, I encourage you to watch the video. It's a short video. Unfortunately, you have to see me again on it, but it does change people's lives. And it's not charity. They're doing work. And what I say, and this is the cold-hearted accountant in me, you're paying for it one way or the other. You're either paying me taxes to clean up stuff and doing this stuff, or you can actually invest in someone and get the return on investment from that individual. So, that would be my kind of cold-hearted bean counter approach to it. But there's some truth to it, and I just think it makes sense.
It does make sense. It does. Thank you. Thank you, both of you, not just for your time this morning, but for the work that you're doing in our community. We appreciate it. We'll make sure that we send the video out to everybody who signed up for the Lunch and Learn, and we'll also attach it to the recording when we send it out to the entire membership. For the folks on the call, our next Lunch and Learn session will take place on February 17th. The topic will be imposter syndrome. Why success still doesn't feel like enough. Sounds interesting. You'll receive the session details in your What's Up Wednesday email, so make sure you look for it. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and have yourselves a great afternoon. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.